So I'm going to talk today about common mistakes that singers make. I would say right off the bat there's four. The first one being pitch. Pitch is non-negotiable. You have to learn to sing on pitch. And learning to sing on pitch requires having an ear, listening to a lot of music, recording yourself a lot. I think recording is the number one way that I correct pitch with singers. Singers hear themselves mostly from inside their inside ear, not from the outer ear. When you cup your ear, you can hear yourself more with the outer ear. And this can cause a lot of mistakes with pitch. So pitch is like a number one non-negotiable issue with singers. If you're not singing on pitch, okay? Phrasing. If you're off time with your phrasing. Phrasing means timing, means rhythm. Some of the best singers in the world were drummers because their phrasing is so awesome. So getting good phrasing is an important part of really learning how to sing well, and it's a very common mistake that a lot of people make. A lot of people just focus on the notes. It's not just the notes. It's the way you deliver those notes, the rhythm of those notes. A singer is a rhythmic instrument as well as a melodic one. Presentation. I see a lot of people make mistakes with presentation. How you present yourself, how you talk about yourself as a singer, not trying to be more than you are, which gets into the fourth one, which I'll get into in just a minute, but dress the part. If you want to be a rock star, look like a rock star. If you want to be a folkie, look like a folkie. You know, pay attention to how you're presenting yourself because you are your brand 24/7. It's not about being inauthentic. It's actually about being very authentic. It's about bringing who you are really to your presentation more. You want to look the part. You want to act the part, dress the part, look the part. Another common mistake is overreaching, trying to do things that are outside of your scope and, you know, trying to sing like these crazy notes when you don't have them in your voice is not benefiting you. It's not showing anybody that you can do it. You really need to sing the notes that you know you can deliver, and that is a big part of not preparing enough. I feel like because the voice is an instrument that lives in your body and you don't have to go purchase it at the store, it's common for a lot of people just to think that they can sing. And people ask me that quite often, actually, do you think anyone can sing? And I said, if you're asking me on a professional level, I would say, not really. But then we have to look at singers that are not great singers, but that are awesome storytellers or songwriters. So it isn't all about the singing voice. So there's many aspects to that. It's not just a straight up answer, but it's learning how to feature your strengths and downplay your weaknesses. So someone who really understands what they're good at and brings that to the forefront is going to be more successful than trying to do something that they can't and that they don't have naturally. So those are four common mistakes that beginning singers make. So I'm going to teach you today a little bit about how to avoid strain. It's probably the number one reason why most singers come to me to train their voices is they're having problems with singing on stage and straining, or just in general having problems with their voice straining, feeling like it's stuck in their throat. And the thing about singing without strain is the first thing to understand is that the vocal muscles should have very little pressure on them. The pressure in the voice should really be taken in the muscles of the pectoral and the rib cage, and to have a nice free back of the neck. Most singers when they strain, they tend to jut their chins forward. And really what you want is the opposite. So you want to tip your chin down slightly, chest lifts at the same time, and bring the sound back and around. So you want to imagine that the sound is actually going this way. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is try not to sing from the throat so much. Imagine the sound resonating up in the mouth. Point your chin slightly down, chest slightly up. Feel a lot of space in the back of your head, like the sound is coming in through the mouth and out the top of the head, and don't sing with so much pressure. Keep it light. Try that. Keep your chin pointed down, chest up. Some people just feel a lot of pressure here at the vocal muscles. Sometimes that can be from physical things, Like if you have a lot of tension in the back of the neck, that tends to kind of squeeze those muscles back there, and there are nerve endings in the back of the neck that actually have to do with the laryngeal muscles. So some of it can be physical, and the best thing to do in that regard is to get a massage, go to an acupuncturist, get this part of your body healthy. I mean, singing in general has a lot to do with physical health. The healthier your body is, the healthier your voice is. So I'm going to show you how to belt without ruining your voice. The first thing to understand is that it doesn't require a lot of force to belt. So when we think of belting, we think of a lot of impact and a lot of force. Unfortunately, that causes problems here. So with the singer, you want to get a deeper breath, because breath is what fuels the voice. So number 1, breath. Number 2, don't hit the sound so hard. Number 3, keep the mouth more open. So these are 3 things that you can do right away to start belting without straining the vocal instrument. You also want to practice vocal exercises so your voice gets stronger. Your voice gets stronger as you sing and as you practice. Vocal exercises are really a focused way that you can make changes in the physical voice and get stronger, because ultimately, the stronger your voice is, the more you can belt with ease. If I sing the word stay, I'm going to sing stay. Okay, now when I sang that, I didn't go stay. I didn't try to use a lot of physical muscle force. I actually used more of the breath, and I thought about creating space inside my mouth. Stay. I'm thinking of the sound up here. So that's where you want to put the sound is really important, because if you start singing from the throat muscles, you can hurt yourself. So I really want you to imagine that, and I use this C shape a lot when I'm training singers. It helps to show what happens inside the mouth. So we really want this opening here. We want the tongue to drop, and we want the palate to lift and have all this space for the sound to circulate in. Stay. Instead of stay, instead of using these throat muscles. So that's the number 1 way to learn how to belt without straining your voice, is to create more space inside the mouth. Don't use as much impact on these muscles, and get a deeper breath to support the sound. Okay, so I'm going to give you a tip or 2 about how to correct nasality in the voice. We've all heard those singers who have that nasal sound. There are singers that are known for that. Edith Piaf, from way back in the day, very famous French singer. There are singers that have more nasal voices. Some people want to correct this, some people don't. In my training, I always correct it, because I'm not a big fan of honky sounds. But here's a couple ways that you can do that. First is to understand that if you're nasal, you usually have a very tight nasal passage, and you're squeezing the muscles behind the nose. I'll get into that a little bit more in just a second, but it's a breath imbalance, and it's a high tongue. So the tongue in the back is high on a nasal voice, which then compromises the overtones and the sound, the passage in the middle of the mouth, which creates a more nasal sound. There's less space, so it's tighter and smaller and constricted. So a couple things that you want to do for that. First is really study breathing. Most people that are nasal are holding their breath, so I'm just going to imitate that sound for a minute. And so if you're nasal, you're not using the breath. So you really want to train your breath and get better control of your breath. The other thing I just mentioned was having a high tongue. So having a high tongue means when you're singing, the back of the tongue is going high. So this is a harder thing to control, but the first thing that I have people do is I have them hold their jaw down, tip of the tongue touching the lower lip. And then I want you to say ga. So you're going to say ga, ga. And notice how on the G, the back of the tongue goes really high, and on the ah, it drops. Now, on those of you that have more nasal voices, the ah won't drop very much. It'll stay in that high position, and you know you have a high tongue, okay? Because on the ah vowel, the tongue is the furthest down of any vowel in the vowel spectrum. So that's a first starter, is to hold the jaw down, keep the tip of the tongue touching the lower lip, and say ga, ga. And see if you can get that back of the tongue to go down. And then you try it with your singing voice. Ga, ka, and just keep practicing that. Keep practicing that tongue dropping. You can also do it without vocalizing. You can just do it with your breath. That's another way. Same position. Take a breath in. Do you see the back of the tongue going down as you take that breath in? And you can add a little bit of a yawn to help that tongue drop. But I call it it's a soft palate flex and a tongue drop, because when the tongue drops, the palate lifts, and that creates that openness in the back of the mouth that ultimately you will prevent nasality when you have that. In general, instead of singing ah for nasal voices, instead of singing ah, sing ah. So every time you sing like ah, ah, make it more instead of ah, ah, ah. So it's an ah with an and that will help you counteract nasality. The good news is that nasality is totally fixable. So if you practice your breath and practice those exercises that I just showed you, you're going to see a significant improvement. So I'm going to tell you a few tips for how to create your signature sound and how to find your niche as a singer. For those of you watching American Idol, it's become very clear when a singer is on their path to finding their niche and whether they're singing in the right genre, whether they've chosen the right songs for them or not. And this is crucial in the music world. There's a lot of great voices out there. There's a lot of talented people, but the people that tend to pop through are those that have found their niche, how they sound good singing. So I'm going to give you just a few tips for that today. The first thing is you want to choose the right material for you, and that starts with lyrical content. You should be singing stuff that you believe in, that is akin to you, that is natural to you. So you want to choose lyrics that mean something to you. You don't want to be singing about stuff that doesn't mean anything to you. You also want to find the right genre. And this takes some experimenting. So one of the things I always do with my students when they come to me is we go through a bunch of different genres and material, and we record them and listen back and see what they sound best singing. Because sometimes the singer might like a style, it might not be what's exactly perfect for them, and they might not have tried other styles. Generally, it's kind of a hybrid of what the singer likes and maybe a direction that they might need to be pushed in a little bit to experiment. You want to find songs that the melody feels easy for you, feels good for you. Songs, different melodies are very different. Everybody focuses on keys, how important keys are. And yes, they are. They're super important. But it's not just the key that is right. It's the actual way that the melody moves. And that has to do with some deeper stuff, like some singers like to hold notes hold out notes for a longer time. Some singers like to move more quickly and riff. All of this depends on, how that melody moves in that song, whether it's right for you. So use your own judgment as you're singing something. You want to sing it at least 50 times. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's the truth. You want to sing it for about 50 times to get it in your muscle memory first before you make that determination. Other ways that I work with people and finding their niche is in songwriting, is in helping them write songs that come from their own lives, the themes from their lives. And this is one of the things I'm very passionate about, that I love working with artists in this capacity. We do a lot of co-writing and helping them pull out the themes from their life and actually create their branding right there in their songwriting. This is something that we do a lot today. So, for those of you that want to be artists out there in the world and you're not yet writing, absolutely start writing. Co-writing is the best way. So these are some tips for finding your signature sound and So I'm going to give you a tip or two for how to expand your vocal range. Vocal range is basically expanded and increased by vocalizing more, by studying, by training, but the principle behind it is that there is an overtone series in the voice. And when the voice is aligned physically more correctly, because singing is a very physical event, it's a coordination of air and muscle. And you must master the breath and you must master your alignment. I always talk a lot about alignment. The chest has to be up, the chin has to be down, and the head has to be back. If you're jutting forward when you're singing, you're going to be singing from these muscles. And you really need to, in order to get that column of air and that flow of breath, your chin needs to be down and your head needs to be back. So alignment is a very important part of this. So the vocal range gets expanded when the overtone series starts to ring. So if I sing and I sing without an open mouth in a position that is going to compromise the sound of my voice, it's going to sound slightly flat. So if I sing, so those, you just heard a little bit of what overtones are. Overtones is when the voice is more open and aligned correctly. You're going to get the voice to ring, and therefore more overtones are going to ring. And that's what creates power in the voice and tone in the voice, but it also creates range. So like my voice teacher, when I was training, when I was a student, used to tell me is that the overtones in the middle of the voice are what create the higher notes and the lower notes. So a lot of people mistakenly just go to the high notes to try to increase range, or go to the low notes to try to push that lower register. That initially works, and that's good. You need to sing and you need to use your voice. But ultimately, what expands your range is getting really good tone in the middle of your voice, in the meatier part of your voice. And that's also where some of the weaker points are. So you have to really work on managing that break area, going from chest to head for girls, or going from chest voice to falsetto for guys. That is a big part of expanding the range, is fixing that break area. A lot of times we talk about that, like singing underneath the door, that you want to slip your voice underneath the door because you need compression anytime you're going higher or anytime you're going through that passage in the voice. So what a lot of people will do as they're going higher, and I'm talking about the break area because this is a part of range. So what a lot of people do will go, and they get really breathy on the top because they have no compression. And what we want to do is, so we can go flawlessly through those register shifts. And that's a big part of controlling the range. So over the years of training singers, I have become somewhat of an expert, in particular with healing hoarse voices. So for instance, I get a lot of referrals from doctors, from ENT, voice doctors, to help singers sing more correctly. And often they come to me and they've come into some kind of problem. So the first thing that I always do is talk about how the body is the instrument and your vocal instrument lives inside your body. So the state of your body, to some degree, determines the state of your voice. So if you're not sleeping, if you're living a rock star lifestyle, and you're staying up late at night and eating late at night, and all these things make a difference in how the voice sounds. So we have to look at all those things when we're healing a hoarse voice. Number one, I would say, go and get yourself a vocal coach. It's important to learn how to sing correctly, and you won't have those problems. Really, within a week or two, students that I work with don't have those problems. We can resolve them very quickly. Sometimes there are other systemic problems or medical problems that you may want to see an ENT for. So if it's a little bit more than just a day or two that hoarseness is sticking around, go and see a professional voice doctor, ENT. And you could have reflux, it could be an allergy problem. There's all kinds of issues with what's causing that hoarseness. But I would say the number one thing that causes a hoarse voice is dehydration. So 99% of the time, when a person has a hoarse voice, they're not drinking water. The other 1% of the time is if they're having reflux. And laryngeal reflux, we call it, for singers' voices, is not necessarily something that acid is coming up, but acid is washing up unbeknownst to the person, and therefore we call it singer's reflux or laryngeal reflux. So if you feel dry all the time and you constantly are drinking water, it is a sign of having reflux. So go and see your ENT and check that out as well. So the number one cause of hoarseness that comes from singing and not from reflux and not from dehydration is because you're singing too much and the vocal muscles actually get pushed up in the throat and it causes hoarseness. So if you're feeling hoarseness at the end of your gig, or if you're feeling hoarseness in general after you sing, you want to pull the laryngeal muscles down, and you just do that gently. So you put your fingers kind of at the top of the throat, and here's the thyroid cartilage Go Google the thyroid cartilage online so that you can see what it looks like there. It really covers about this territory, and you want to put your fingers at the top and then just begin a yawn and pull it down. So when you're pulling the larynx down, you pull it down gently, no yanking. But I would say to wrap up this section about having a hoarse voice is number 1, drink a lot of water. And number 2, be healthy, eat healthy, get lots of rest. And number 3, a little bit of massage and pulling the larynx down will help you restore that voice right away. I'm going to give you some tips for how to keep your voice healthy. The health of the body has a lot to do with the health of the voice. So you can't mistreat your body. So you need to drink a lot of water, you need to eat healthy, you need to eat lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. They have a lot of vitality in them, and they have a lot of moisture in them. Singers need a lot of moisture. So number 1 is to drink 8 to 10 glasses of water a day. And this is non-negotiable. Like, water is non-negotiable for a singer unless you want a really raspy voice. And raspy voices sometimes sound cool, but they have a lot of vocal problems associated with them, so it's not recommended. So drinking 8 to 10 glasses of water a day, eating really healthy, eating lots of fruits and vegetables, a lot of that vitality you want. I do a lot of juicing, particularly when I sing a lot. And that juicing, all that extra nutrition brings so much vitality. Singers need a lot of vitality, and they need a lot of breath, and juicing helps to oxygenate the blood. So we need a lot of oxygen in the blood as well. You want to sleep. You want to sleep at least 7 to 9 hours. Some people are lighter sleepers than others, so I don't like to say, okay, you have to have 9 or 10 hours. But sleep makes a huge difference in the voice, as much as water does. Those are the 2 things that are non-negotiable. I know a lot of people, when they're on tour, have an issue with that, staying up late and that kind of thing. You have to learn to turn your mind off, maybe practice meditation or breathing exercises right before you go to bed. You can also use chamomile tea or sleepy time tea to help you drift off to sleep. I sometimes put lavender oil on my pillow because lavender is very relaxing and it helps you kind of shut off the brain. I also use passion flower, which is an herb that allows you to kind of turn the brain off and relax the nervous system, but it doesn't sedate you at all. And so we use that a lot with touring artists, particularly because they're very pumped after their shows. So it's like, okay, let's party. It's time to have some fun. And they end up staying too late, and then they have to get up early for a radio show. So just remember that the instrument of the voice lives inside the body. So the health of the body has a lot to do with the health of the voice. So treat your body well. If you're going to go out and have some, to a party and have some alcohol or whatever, which, is not so great for singing, but you want to have a little bit of some fun and you want to eat pizza or cheese or things that we don't recommend so much for singing, just remember you have about 3 days to recover from that, for the vocal muscles to recover, the vocal instrument to recover. So think of it as a 3-day rule. So if you're going to go have some fun, make sure there's 3 days between that fun and your singing. So I'm going to teach you today a few tips about how to learn from other singers. The truth is that every singer out there learned from other singers. We listen to singers and we copy them, we emulate them, we learn their phrasing, their tone, how they use their vibrato, and these are, ways that we start to use their techniques within our own voice. So I recommend it in the beginning. Ultimately, we don't want to copy another singer, but there are these great songs and these great voices out there that we have so much to learn from. So in the beginning, I always have singers sing along with a lot of songs that they love, and their voice will get better because you will learn a lot by copying them. So what do I mean by learn from other singers? I mean by listening to their phrasing, studying their phrasing, how they're approaching delivering their lines. What is the emotional interpretation behind what they're singing? Like, don't just listen on a surface level, listen on a deeper level and tear it apart. What are their vocal textures? What are their dynamics? If you just sing along with them and sing on top of them and you don't really listen, you're not really going to learn that much. So it's a combination of singing along with them and listening that's going to give you those inside secrets to how they're making their sound happen. The trick is understanding that your voice is going to be always different than those singers that you're listening to, but you have so much to benefit from listening to them. And then once you've got it down, then practice with an instrumental track, find one on YouTube of that song, sing through it, sing it down a few times like that singer did, but then try to ad-lib a little bit and add some of your own voice. Try to let their voice sort of fade into the background in your mind and bring forward what your voice wants to do and how it wants to move, and try some things. One of the things I suggest is play the instrumental track and just ad-lib over it as if you were a horn or a guitar soloing, even just sing on a vowel and try to make up some notes and stretch your ear outside of the notes that are within the song. Then go back to the melody and try to add your own twist to it. So these are some of the ways that you can learn from listening to other singers. So I'm going to teach you an exercise for how to sing with your diaphragm. Now, I can't go into all the details here, and it's a bit more complicated than I'm going to show you, but for a quick peek into how to use the diaphragm and what the diaphragm is, this is going to help you understand the subject. So the diaphragm is a muscle that's inside the rib cage. Okay, so here's one side of your rib. If I had another hand, it would be over here, right? Diaphragm is inside that rib cage. The diaphragm doesn't have any nerve endings, so we can't feel it. So it causes a lot of confusion for singers or wannabe singers when we start talking about singing with the diaphragm, because it's not a muscle we can feel. But we can control its movement by the surrounding muscles. So when the ribs open, the diaphragm has room to go down. When the ribs are too tight and locked, so it has a lot to do with your breathing, of course, when the ribs are too tight and locked, that diaphragm isn't going to go down. So, of course, breathing and learning how to open up the middle of the body, not breathe up into the chest, but breathe down into this area right here, and it really is 360 degrees around the body that you want to move when you breathe. This is how you start to control that diaphragm movement and get it to move down. Now, when the diaphragm moves down, it pulls air into the lungs. That's why so many people, when they take a deep breath, they do this, and they breathe into the upper chest. Singers have to keep the chest lifted, elevated slightly more than normal, and then reach down below the chest for the breath. And this is how we get that diaphragm movement going. Like so. So for those of you that are very tight in this area, particularly dancers have a hard time with this because they're always tucking their stomach. Or for those of you that have very tight abdomens or work your abdomens out a lot, this is going to be a little bit tougher for you. So with this hand that's being placed on your upper stomach, I want you to apply more pressure in the areas that don't move. So if your rib cage doesn't move, or your upper stomach doesn't move, or your back muscles, where my thumb is wrapping around to, if either of those areas feel tighter than normal, apply more pressure. So if your stomach feels tighter, apply more pressure as you breathe. So I just want you to keep that chest elevated. Hand here on the upper stomach with your fingers pointing in, hand on the rib cage. Exhale your air, but don't drop the chest. So you don't want to go like that, right? Chest stays up. Let's try that again. Take a breath in, blow your air out, keep the chest elevated. This is the first step to using the diaphragm correctly. Second step is trying to open down here. So breathe down into your abdomen and your ribs and your back, all the way around into your back. And blow the air out, chest stays up, doesn't drop. And then take a breath in, reach down into your abdomen, ribs, and back. Imagine that diaphragm going all the way down, blowing the air out, keeping the chest elevated. You're on your way to breathing into your diaphragm. So I'm going to give you an exercise and a lesson for singing with good pitch. And those of you who watch American Idol, the word pitchy has become a household word. We all know what that means when a singer is singing slightly off pitch. Pitch is something that even good singers work hard to have. You can have a really good musical ear and you can have a good voice and still go slightly off pitch. You can have a voice that goes off pitch just from not being a singer or not using the voice much. The more you sing, the better your center of pitch gets. You want to think of pitch like a circle with a bullseye right in the center. And different singers actually sing, and professional singers who have good pitch all have a slightly different center of pitch. So there are some singers that sing slightly sharp and some singers that sing slightly flat, but not enough to go outside of that circle. So it sounds like it's a really good pitch, but if you put them together singing in unison, you would even hear that. Now for you, starting to get a better sense of pitch, I want you to start thinking of your notes as circles and that you want to aim for the bullseye. The best way to really do this and do it well is to record yourself and listen back. The first thing in determining whether you're singing on pitch is understanding whether you're singing sharp on the sharp side or the flat side of the note. So I like to take it to the max first. Let's sing at the center of pitch and then go outside of the pitch so that you can hear that difference. So we're going to go sharp first. So I'm going to sing ah, ah. Doesn't sound so good, right? But that is important to determine that that's a sharp note. Now here's a flat note. Here's the center. Ah. Sounds flat, okay? So you can't have good pitch until your ear hears the center of pitch and whether you're singing sharp or singing flat. So that's kind of the first thing. And I recommend going to the piano, playing a note and trying to hit the pitch, and then go slightly sharp and then come back to the center and then go slightly flat. Kind of like tuning a guitar string, how we bring it into the pitch, okay? The next thing with pitch is using the piano or using an instrument as a guide, which is really helpful. And the third thing is to sing a cappella a lot. But here's the thing with that. If you're going to sing a cappella, I'd like you to find what key the song is in and use an iPhone app or something, a piano app, to actually hit the note first for you so that you're in the right key if you're going to sing a cappella. And that's kind of a trick for singing a cappella songs in general. If you're going to go for an audition, you want to make sure that you don't come in on the wrong note or in the wrong key, and then all of a sudden you're singing way higher than you need to. You want to be in the right key. Okay, so back to pitch. So we're going to sing center of pitch. Now, what a lot of you are going to do is you're going to slide into that note. You're going to go, ah. And what I want you to imagine is you're going to aim right for that center of the bullseye. Ah, ah. And you want to imagine coming to it from above. From above. Why? Is because the actual soft palate, which is inside the mouth, needs to lift for you to be able to hit center of pitch. And that gets a little bit technical, but you can start taking voice lessons with a vocal coach to experience that more, because it's really exciting when you start to make those changes and be more accurate with your pitch. So we're just going to do a little scale singing on ah. Ah. And again. Okay, now, pretty good so far. Now we're going to go to a 5-note scale. The challenge here is in the major scale. There is a whole note, half note, whole note series, okay? So the relationship between all of those notes is not exactly the same, which is where most people tend to go off pitch. And this is a little bit more advanced, but I wanted to give it to you because I think it would be interesting for you to learn. So we're going to hear that scale again, and the 4th note is the half step. Here we go. Ah, half step. Ah, ah. Those notes are closer to each other than the first 3. Let's do it again from the beginning of the scale. Ah. I think of it as a sideways note. Let's do it again. Mastering your whole steps and half steps have a lot to do with having good pitch. So I'm going to give you a few tips for how to sing with a cold. I will start off by saying that singing with a cold is not fun. But as a professional singer, it's something that happens and you have to learn to deal with. The first thing to not do is don't take antihistamines. Try your best not to take antihistamines because they dry out your throat so much that it makes singing harder. It's actually easier to sing with all that wet, sloppy stuff than to have dry vocal cords. So there are some natural remedies that work much better than regular pharmaceutical antihistamines. I recommend D-HIST, D-HIST. This is what a lot of professional singers use to deal with their allergies. Allergies in general mean that something's off in your health, so you want to take a look at maybe you're not taking enough vitamins. Vitamin C is a really powerful vitamin that raises the immune system, but singers have to take non-ascorbic vitamin C. They don't want to take regular vitamin C because it causes laryngeal reflux that then dries the vocal cords, and that's a little problem with that. So make sure you get non-ascorbic vitamin C. Singing with a cold, I mean, in general, what I recommend to my singers is to try to ignore it, to try to just sing through it. And the more that you do this, you stop worrying, oh my gosh, I have a cold, I don't sound right, which then makes you sing worse because you're fearful. So you always want to sing confidently. So you say to yourself, I have a cold, but I can do this anyway. Maybe I'm not going to hit that high note tonight, so you want to have a plan B. There's a plan A for each song and a plan B. I recently saw a famous singer sing, and she, instead of going for that high note, went for her plan B note. Did anyone really notice? Maybe those who are musicians noticed, maybe a few other people noticed, but she didn't squawk on that note. She actually sang the plan B note correctly. So have your A and B notes planned for the times when you have a cold. And just stay super, super hydrated. One of the ways is drinking water. One of the ways is steaming. And that's why sometimes people sing a lot in the shower, because the steam actually is very moisturizing to the voice. You can jump in the shower, take a nice hot steam, or you can steam over the stove with a pot of water and just put a towel over your head and breathe in that steam. That's going to bring moisture to your vocal folds right away, and it's going to clear out some of that junk. I also recommend gargling. Gargling with warm salt water is awesome. And when I have a cold, I go to the gig with throat coat tea, which you can get at a health food store, and it brings down the inflammation and soothes the vocal folds. So I'll give you one other little insider tip that I learned from Beyonce's team, which is loquat syrup. And this is you can get at a Chinese pharmacy drugstore. It works wonders for the voice. Some people put like a little teaspoon in some warm water. I just take like a teaspoon or half a teaspoon and just eat it like honey. Let it sit in the back of the throat. Works wonders. So these are some awesome tips for how to sing with a cold. So I'm going to teach you a little bit about using microphones. We're going to talk about performance microphone, like this microphone that I'm using today. This is a Line 6 microphone. This is actually a microphone used by American Idol currently. And it is a digital wireless, which means that it doesn't operate on a bandwidth. And it is a sensational mic. It's one of my favorites. Most singers are a little bit afraid of the microphone in the beginning, so they tend to pull back too much, and just notice what happens when I do that. It gets thinner and it doesn't have that presence. So in the beginning of using a mic, I always teach singers to eat the microphone, almost have their lips on the microphone as I do right now, or close by, okay? And when you're singing louder, you can pull away a little bit, but don't pull away so far, because then it starts sounding thin. That's more prevalent on a recording microphone even than on a performance microphone. So eating the microphone, very important, not being afraid of it. And the best way to get good at that is to get a microphone, have a microphone and a stand at home. Use a microphone regularly to sing. If you don't want to bother your neighbors, you can plug that, get an interface and plug it into your computer and wear headphones. And, get used to singing on a microphone so that you learn a couple of things about it. One, the sweet spot. There's a sweet spot in the center of that microphone that's very important. And if you're singing like this, you're not going to get that sweet spot. You've got to be right in the center of it, okay? But the best way to learn how to use a microphone is to get comfortable on it, so it's to use it all the time. Also, microphone placement is important. If you're going to play the piano, you want that microphone, like when you sit at the piano, and then position your microphone. Notice I have it at an angle like this so that I can look down at my hands and I can also look at you. Okay? That's really important, because if you go to the piano and say you get it all positioned and everything, and then you look down and you're like, whoops, or You have the microphone positioned too low. I see a lot of singers do this on stage, and they put both hands and they lean on the microphone, and then look what happens. A beginner student the other day did that in one of my sessions, and I had to go up on stage and help her because she didn't know what to do. So when you're sitting at the piano, it's important to have the microphone positioned correctly so that you can look straight ahead and you can look down at your fingers and not be confused and have to move up and down so you go off the microphone, right? And when I'm playing piano in particular, I will keep my mouth on the microphone like so that I know where I am in space, so that I'm not moving all around, right? Now when you're standing up, here's a typical mic position, like when you're standing up. And one of the things you want to be careful of, especially when you're not used to using the microphone a lot, is if you put weight on it, it tends to do this as you're singing, and then you're kind of stuck. So either make sure that the microphone itself is, really, really tight, and don't put weight on it. Just put your hands here. Don't put weight on it. And a lot of singers, just one hand. If it's both hands, again, don't put weight on it. You also want to get comfortable taking the mic off, and don't take the mic off while you're singing. Wait for a break and then take the mic off. Always put your hand on the stand first instead of just grabbing the microphone, right? And take the microphone off, and then make sure that you move the stand so that it doesn't upstage you, right? And then you want to get really comfortable with whatever your movements are with where that microphone center is, right? So people start moving in the beginning and they start pulling the microphone away because they're focused on their movement, right? This is just for the beginning. For singers that are more seasoned, you'll see them doing this a lot, pulling that microphone back when they're singing louder. This is when you're a little bit more advanced. And you know how to control it, but you're really controlling it by what you hear. And on stage, you have monitors. The monitors are either above you or they're on the floor. So this is what's feeding your voice back to you. So you want to make sure that you have a good monitor level so you can hear yourself, or it's easy to go off pitch when you're on stage. So these are just a couple of tips for a live microphone, but remember, you want to get comfortable with it so it doesn't look like you're struggling. The last thing you want to be thinking about on stage is the microphone. You want to be thinking about your music and what you're singing about and your audience.